So let's talk about the first gig that I played as a frontman. Some of you might already know, I started out as a drummer. I started playing drums whenever I was 3 years old. And then I started playing guitar when I was 5. And I've been singing since I could really make noise from what I was told. I started off as a drummer, and I was the drummer of a band. I was in bands in high school and stuff like that. And I was the drummer of a band, and I love drumming. Drumming is a passion of mine that I really miss doing as much as I used to. I used to drum for hours every single day, and it's just a different form of expression or release, I guess, from singing or playing guitar. It's more primal. I decided I wanted something more at the time, so after high school and all that, I didn't go to college right away. I decided I was going to be a musician, and it worked out. Look at that. But I was the frontman of a band. Whatever. I was the singer and rhythm guitarist of a band. And I was really young, and the world was going a million miles a minute. As a matter of fact, this guitar and this guitar, I played on stage with that band back then. So my first gig as a frontman, I hadn't really sang in front of a crowd. Really, I had done some performances, but not in a rock setting where all the eyes were going to be, on the singer. Whenever I was a drummer of a band, I also sang in that. I enjoy singing and playing drums too, but it was always a little different because you sat behind things and it was mainly backup vocals. But we got all practiced up. We practiced 2 to 3 times a week, and things were moving really fast. It was like being strapped to a rocket, and we were going to play our first gig. And our first gig was, we were opening up, but we were just behind the headliner of this band that was having their album release party. So there was a lot of people. A lot of people showed up because this band was fairly well known for the area. So they had quite a bit of followers, quite a big fan base. And they were doing their album release party, like I said. And we were playing just before them. I think there were 4 bands that night. You see my hand? Yeah, 4 bands. 2 bands, then us, and then the headliner. And I remember at this point I was 18. Yeah, I was 18. And not old enough to drink here in the United States. I was nervous. I was really nervous, and I didn't know what to expect. I didn't want to mess up. I had stage fright really bad. And a lot of people get stage fright. Look at Maynard. He has stage fright, still does. There were so many people there, way more than I expected. And I can just remember the bar was set up so that you walked in the front door, which was really, really cumbersome because that was also the load-in door. And you kind of went through this, like you walked in, and then there was about, a 30-degree turn, and then there was another door after like 6 feet, and that's whenever you actually entered the venue, bar. They served alcohol, some bar, venue, whatever. So it was really awkward, especially to get like bass drums and amplifier cabs through. So bands would have all their stuff sitting outside on the sidewalk, and it was just, it was chaos, but it was rock and roll, right? Or metal, because we played hard rock, new metal stuff. So that was really awkward. So you once you get in, the stage was risen up pretty good, and it was to the left, and it took up the wall. It was it was a good sized stage, I guess. Had the good lighting too, which I'll get to the lights here in a minute, because there's another part of the story about those. My hand's out of frame. So you walk in the door, and to the left there's a stage, and then there was the floor, everybody looking at the stage. And then as you went forward more and off to the right, that's where you would get your alcohol. And then, so imagine the venue is long. It's not wide. It's like a rectangle. So you keep walking, and then there was a risen section, and then there was more standing area up there, and then the sound guy for the house, he would mix the sound and everything. And then there was a pool table, of all things, just shoved way back in there. But there was a wall that divided that, and then down more was the bathroom. So it might be a confusing explanation, but whatever. You went up to get on the floor, or you could keep going straight, go down this hallway, and then there was the pisser back there. But the point of that was there's a wall that separated the visual line, the line of sight between the bar and way back in the back. And I was so nervous. The bass player, he was over 21. He would go get beer for himself, and he would come back because we were just hanging out. I always got lucky. I didn't have to carry any gear, and I had people do sound checks for me, and it was pretty nice. But the bassist, he's a great friend of mine still to this day. I mean, he's like a brother to me. So he would go get his beer, and while we're watching the other bands perform, and while people are starting to show up, we're sitting back in the back, and nobody knows that we're part of the band or anything. We're just sitting back there trying to blend in or whatever. And he would set his beer down, and whenever he would turn away, I would grab his beer and chug it because I was just so nervous. I needed something, so I was like, hell with it. Down it goes. And he'd turn around and he'd get pissed. That was great. So he'd go get another beer, and then he'd forget and set it down, and down it would go. I'd grab it again. And it was wonderful. Needless to say, whenever I got on stage, I was still really, really nervous. I was scared, and I remember trembling. And the first song that we played was a song that I started on guitar playing, and it was a picked pattern. It was a picking pattern on, and my hands were shaking, and I was just thinking to myself, oh, just get through it, just play it right. And this song started off with 4 bars of an intro of just me, and then the whole band kicked in. And whenever the whole band kicked in, the crowd just started screaming. And I remember that was the moment where I opened my eyes and I looked out, and I never really gathered at that point how many people had showed up, but I opened my eyes and all I could see was just people everywhere. You couldn't get from the front to the back or from the left to the right. There was just people solid in that place. Up the stairs to that second riser area, and there were actually people standing on the pool table in the back. And there were people in the hallway for the pisser, and people just piled up against the bar. There were way more people in there than probably what legally should have been in there. And everybody's screaming at once, and they were screaming so loud that I couldn't hear everything else that was going on. We're playing through these amplifiers cranked up, and there's monitors and loudspeakers and everything, and for a little bit, all I could hear was the crowd screaming. And it was like time slowed down because this was our first show and people were just all into it. We hadn't even really started the first song necessarily. I mean, we hadn't even started the first verse, which actually, that song didn't have a first verse. I hated that song. And everybody loved it and I hated it. The song didn't have a first verse. It was just like, had this weird intro and then it went into the chorus. I don't know. I still don't like that song. People still talk about it. But there's just this moment where everything kind of slowed down and I just heard the crowd screaming and I couldn't hear the instruments really. And the other guitarist, the lead guitarist, was on my right and the bassist was on my left. Still pissed off that I drank all his beer. Drummer's behind me, of course. And we're playing and the chorus hits and the chorus had this screaming part that I did. And my voice was dry because I was nervous, cotton mouth. And so I'm just pushing. And there's a video of it somewhere. And I cringe at listening to myself whenever I watch it just because I was like, man, my voice was dry as sucked. But we got done with that song. Everybody's going nuts. And I asked, I said to give me some water. And of course, just water starts showing up. It was pretty cool. And you have to be careful whenever that stuff happens because people like they want you to drink the water that they're, getting. So you have like a bunch of different cups of water, whatever I need water. It's like Stone Cold summoning beer out of nowhere when it hit a wrestling ring or something. And you have to be careful with that because you can kill an amplifier really quick with a misplaced complimentary beverage. Or you can kill pedal board really quick. So we're trying to be like, oh, thanks, this is great. And also keep it away from the stuff and keep stuff from flying. And so we start in on the second song. And I remember still being pretty nervous. I don't remember much playing the second song because that was the crossover moment from stage fright to enjoyment. And by the third song we played, things were just lit up. It was awesome. And, I took my guitar off and it got set over there somewhere. And I remember I was really enjoying it at this point. Beer was good and working. And my voice, wasn't nervous anymore, so you kind of lose that cotton mouth sort of thing. And I had my microphone, audio was sounding good, Houseman mixed it great. And that's whenever I started to realize that we were playing so heavy and things were so loud and energetic that whenever I looked out into the crowd while I was singing, I could see pieces of the ceiling falling into the crowd. And then the crowd would rip up those pieces and throw them everywhere. And I don't even know if there's a way to explain what that's like. To look out into a crowd, see pieces of tile and shit just falling into this crowd, and it's just getting devoured. It's one of the most adrenaline rushed, fueling feelings that you can probably ever have. And at that point, I actually went out onto the monitors that were in front of the stage. I said, hell with this. I'm going out in the monitors. The monitors were pretty tall. And I'm standing there, and this is where the stage lights come in. Because the stage lights at that point were right in front of my face and lifted up a little bit. Those things were hot. Hot, hot, hot. Standing up there and feels like torches on my face, but I didn't care. I was in it. I was, balls to the wall. Let's do this, right? Pick up my face and put it back on. Well, I wear a mask now, huh? Look at that. Anyway, I was screaming and singing, and the lights were hitting me, and the lights were changing. The crowd was going nuts, and that show, once that moment passed of stage fright, it was like the entire show got crammed into 10 seconds. And that's the thing that kind of sucks. The fear lasts forever. The enjoyment is like a flash in the pan. And I wish it was the other way around. Because whenever you're into a show and you see the crowd and they're giving you the energy back, and then you're able to reciprocate and put on a good performance, that is a power unlike any other. And then after that, we were invited. Actually, we felt really bad because we apparently must have wore the crowd out. Because whenever we got done, loadout happened, which is where you take your gear and you put it back in the trailer and whatnot. And we stayed and watched the headliners who were having their album release party. And what made us feel really bad was like 90% of the crowd left. Whoops. Wasn't our fault. Okay. We put on a good show and people were tired. But they did their album release, and I think it went well for them. Anyway, they invited us to a house party afterwards, and we show up in this huge house. It's like a mansion, and the house party is going on. There's a lot of people there, and I mean, one of those things where us and the band, we just felt kind of out of place because we're down in the trenches kind of band, and this is a really nice house. But the alcohol was inside, so we had to go outside. And we're partying, and I'm standing in what I think was a kitchen area. And the singer from the headlining band was standing there, and me being the singer of the other band, I'm standing there, and he just lifts his glass, and everybody's probably 20 people or so in this kitchen area, and then people spread out throughout the house, mansion, whatever, and he did a toast to the band that I was singing for, and he said, I want to raise a toast to, insert band name, the band that we will always play with and never play after. And he took his drink, and I didn't know what to say at that point. I mean, it was a compliment. It was funny too. Of course, like I said, I was 18, house party, and then there was a knock at the door, and that was the police. So there was a mist where I once stood. Oh, gone. Actually, I wasn't gone. I went downstairs in the basement. Being that it was a mansion, the police didn't mess with anything. They just said that they wanted people to stay inside, I think is what it was. That was the story of it. Don't remember much after that. Somehow my gear got back, and it still worked. That's a good thing. When your gear comes back, that's good. And things just exploded from there. If you want to hear more stories about days of the past, let me know. You can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter as Stenosis Music. If you want to learn more about the life of a musician and learn more about me, subscribe to the channel. Like this video, it makes me feel good. And if you want to pick up any merchandise or any of the gear that I use, the links are down below. We'll see you next time.